For each founder, I will have an intro episode that introduces the different podcast episodes. One or more that I do, and then other ones that are on the same person from other podcasts. I'll have clips from each of those podcasts, and then I'll have links to all the different podcasts that I use each week on the webpage for that one. I'm going to do these in order of length, starting with the shortest and moving to the longest, because I'm assuming those who are most impatient want the shortest one, and they're going to want that first. So, here we go. Wanderer's History Podcast. A 15-minute podcast that gives a little less battle info than I have on mine, but still the big ones, and goes into Scanderbeg's history. Some more on the allies and European enemies of Scanderbeg as well. Wanderer's Podcast is arranged as a series of episodes that basically covers all of Mediterranean history in the 16th century. It's still being worked on, so it's not finished, but that's the idea behind it seems.
Scanderbeg was given lands near his father's dominion, the Castrioti dominion. John Castrioti, his father, was afraid of a possible invasion and reached out to the Venetians. In 1430, Scanderbeg campaigned for Murad II and was made a Sipahi. He remained loyal, or better said neutral, to the Sultan during the Albanian Revolt of 1432 till 1436. Between 1437 and 1438, he became governor of Kruje and eventually was given the title of Vali and a unit of several thousand troops. Scanderbeg's father, John, died in 1437. However, he managed to keep good relations with Venice and Ragusa. During the 38-43 period, he is thought to have been fighting alongside the Ottomans in their European campaigns, mostly against the Christian forces of John Hunyadi, who we talked about in the previous episodes.
Founders of Nations, that's the one I do. It's about a 30-minute podcast episode that focuses mostly on his military prowess and what we can learn from how he conducted his military campaigns. It also talks about the results of what happened. The third one is Anthology of Heroes. This is a newer podcast. It's doing something similar to Founders of Nations. It's a 45-minute episode, but it has lots of good details as well as some quotes from Scanderbeg. And that podcast is basically going through A to Z like I'm going to be doing, except rather than looking at founders, it's going to be looking at the most interesting people in those countries. So we'll have some overlap like we did here with Scanderbeg, but it won't always.
It's the 2nd of September, 1457. A large Ottoman army is besieging the most important stronghold in Albania, the fortress of Cluj. There is a relaxed atmosphere in the siege camp, and why shouldn't there be? Scanderbeg, the leader of the rebel army, has not been seen or heard from in months. As the soldiers slowly amble out of morning prayers, a dull rumbling is heard. The soldiers look warily at each other. Before anyone can react, Albanian cavalry charge through the camp in every direction. Chaos erupts as soldiers desperately try and form up for battle. In the midst of the dust and confusion, Scanderbeg is visible at the head of the charge, his goat-headed helmet gleaming in the morning sun as he cuts a path through the Ottoman soldiers like butter. This is the incredible true story about the life of George Castrioti, better known to history as Scanderbeg. Welcome to Anthology of Heroes, where we go through all the countries from A to Z, detailing the life of one interesting person for each episode, someone you hopefully haven't heard of. Rebels, renegades, traitors and misfits, find them all here.
The next one is the Bulgarian History Podcast. He's got a few seasons on the Ottoman Empire and around 10 30-minute episodes that cover the period around Scanderbeg's rebellion from the Ottoman Empire's point of view. So he looks at the Ottomans at that time, the Albanians, the Hungarians, the Wallachians, lots of different nations. You'll kind of get an idea of what was going on all around this rather than just mostly what was going on with Scanderbeg. And he has one that's specifically a summary of Scanderbeg, which is episode 67. That's the episode that I'll sample on here. This podcast is focused, as its name says, on the Bulgarian history, but it does a great job looking at the Balkans in general, so I highly recommend it.
They wished to surrender Kruje and end the war, despite them refusing to end the war when the Ottomans had offered some peace agreement recently. So In essence, Italy is very willing to throw Albania and Scanderbeg under the bus. But King Ferdinand, well, he even signed a peace agreement with Mehmed at this moment. So this ends any possibility of support from him. Remember, King Ferdinand has been an important patron of Scanderbeg, a supporter of Scanderbeg in Albania, but he ducks out here. He says, I'm not getting involved in this war. So Scanderbeg finally leaves Rome in February of 1467 at the as the winter starts to end, with a paltry sum of money from the Pope and knowledge that, well, Albania was not going to get any help from anyone, and that if Scanderbeg did not act, Albania would soon be lost.
We talk about dead people is the last one. This is a 2-hour episode that goes into a lot of details. The first hour is pretty much all a review of everything leading up to his taking power, including his grandfather and his father. This is definitely pretty biased against the Ottomans, so I would say maybe don't take that to heart too much, but definitely they seem to do a good job with Scanderbeg's info. This podcast is basically like listening to a rock station's morning radio show, but it's about historical events. So there's 2 guys or more that are going to be talking back and forth about this stuff. Lots of silliness and a pretty steady amount of cursing. So, yeah. All right. Well, that's our resources for this week. I will have links to all these podcasts on my page, lang4life.com, Lang, then the number 4, then life.com, lang4life.com/founders. And then the episode for this one, this would be Albania's episode. It'll have all the links for all the different podcasts on it. Hope you have a good one. I'll see you on my episode next.